Two massive derbies in the Premier League this weekend. Let's start off by talking about the Manchester derby on Saturday lunchtime. Going into this game, people were talking about how it's the closest the Manchester clubs have been to since, well, really, Pep Guardiola's Man City won the title by 100 points and have been so clear of Man United, while Man United themselves have been a complete shambles. And even though Man City took the lead in the second half, in the end, United won the game. We can't not talk about the offside decision. It's an absolute shambles that was given as a goal, because even though Rashford didn't touch the ball himself, Akanji and Ederson, their movement was affected by Rashford's movement himself, so the goal shouldn't have been allowed. And in football, goals do change games. And from there, Man United at home with the goal just scored. They had the momentum and they went on to get a second and win the game. Having said that though, it was a poor reaction from Manchester City, and with their squad, their manager, you would expect them to be better and be able to react to that difficult moment. And we really have to question now, are Man United in the title race? For me, not quite. They are on a really good run of form, but I think they need to sustain it for a little bit longer. It's not like Arsenal where they've consistently throughout the whole season have shown really great form. It's only been in the last 8 or 9 games, and it'll be interesting to see what happens when Man United play in the Europa League again and whether that affects their form or not, because they aren't actually just in the Europa League, which typically does affect teams quite badly, but they're still in the FA Cup and the League Cup. They're in 4 competitions. I think that will massively affect their league form, but at the very least you can say it really solidifies their spot in the top 4. As for Man City, they're by no means out the title race, don't get me wrong, and actually secretly their focus is probably mainly on the Champions League, because that's a trophy these group of owners and players and Pep haven't won with Man City. However, I think we can say now that Man City probably won't run away with it. And how would you define that? Well, Man City having maybe 9 points ahead of the second place team with maybe, 5 or 6 games left. Touch wood, it's going to be a proper title race. Now, I don't really mind kind of who wins. I say kind of because I think it's nice for different teams to win. My grandfather's an Arsenal fan, so secretly, a little bit of me does want Arsenal to win. But look, if Man City win, I wouldn't be too bothered or upset. It's just nice that in the Premier League we have a proper title race, especially considering the top 4 race kind of might be over, maybe, sort of. We'll talk about that later, but still a great win for Man United. And shout out to Marcus Rashford. He is continuing some really good form. So on to the North London derby. For me, one of my favourite derbies in the Premier League, just because it always has so much needle in it. There's always a lot of red cards, big goals, lots of action and big moments. And this one, for me, it didn't disappoint, but it just wasn't the same as other derbies because the game was kind of over in the first half, really. Going into this game, we all knew that Spurs start so badly in the first half. So if Arsenal went a goal or 2 head up, if they just held out for a little bit, they would comfortably win. And that's exactly what happened. The Lloris own goal really just set the tone for Spurs and their performance. And I don't remember a big chance Spurs created in the latter stages of the second half. So extremely disappointing from them. And they're not out the top 4 race just yet, don't get me wrong. But at this stage of the season, halfway point, to be 5 points away from Man United is pretty poor. And given the form that Spurs are in and Man United are in, it's going to take quite a big change for it to turn around and for Spurs to really get back into the top 4 race. But this is a really great win for Arsenal. And at what point do they become title favourites? Because yes, this group are quite inexperienced in being this sort of position, as is Mikel Arteta as a manager, but they're 8 points clear of Man City now, which is really significant. For me, I would consider themselves title favourites once they play Man City at least once and don't lose against them, because that's when you can really think, right, it's going to be a lot harder for Man City to take points off Arsenal now. Of course, let me know what you think in the comments below. And speaking of top 4 race, I'm just going to quickly mention Liverpool because what is happening with them? Now, it's still early to say Spurs are out the top 4 race, but Liverpool, would you actually say they're out the top 4 race now? After being comfortably thrashed by Brighton by 3-0. I do feel sorry for Liverpool in some ways because they have a lot of injuries, especially going forward with the likes of Diaz and Jota and Firmino out. But even so, their performance against Brighton was so bad. I'm going to make a video in the next week or so talking about the Premier League halfway point and really analysing both the top half and the bottom half of the table. But I wanted to talk about the top half teams, specifically the title race and the top 4 race, because there were so many big derbies this weekend. So let me know what you think about the Premier League action that took place this weekend. And don't forget to like, subscribe and comment. Thank you very much.